So, welcome to the spoiler review of 11 Rebels. And I just want to say this movie's just been such a wild ride, and we weren't expecting that. And even just in the States, we've already been waiting 7 months for this movie to come out. And then when we finally get it, it's great and all, but we find out that it's missing 35 minutes from the original. And there's still no word on what's become of that and if we'll ever get to see the full cut. So this is just going to be the spoilers for the cut that I saw, which is the 2-hour version. And if you don't want to get spoiled, I do have a non-spoiler review. And in that review, I said that 11 Rebels was a overall good film. It had great action, great choreography, great production, great scenery, but it was also a little convoluted with its story. And the characters could have used a little bit more development. And I'm thinking that this was because it was missing the 35 minutes that would probably fix this. So if that is the case, that is a shame. Anyway, let's get on to the spoiler review. So the movie opens with a commoner named Masa, and we see him rushing to his deaf wife's aid, and this is as a samurai sexually assaults her. And happening elsewhere, Lord Mitaguchi from Shibata is asked to make a move by sending Shibata troops to the battlefield as the Northern Alliance army has united, and the Imperial army needs to be stopped in Ichigo. And a different leader named Saito is getting annoyed as Mitaguchi promises to send troops, but on the field, Shibata's army is always missing. And the excuse he comes up with is that the soldiers did not reach their destination because of a peasant uprising. And since Mitaguchi is serving an adolescent lord, the alliance leaders warn Mitaguchi to get the lord's approval to send an army. If not, the alliance will consider Shibata a traitor and wage war. So real quick, just this adolescent lord that we see is pretty interesting to the film. He's sort of like the King Joffrey, where he's this kid with all this power, but he's also sadistic, so he loves torturing his servants. And this also could be because of the cut of the film that it had, but I found it a little weird that this character was never really touched on again. And we didn't really see any resolution with him either. So I just felt like something was missing with that. But I will say the film's opening really sets a tone with just both the cruelty of samurai towards Masa's wife and just the setting itself before the Boshin War. And next in the film we see Masa, and he's just real cold and determined. And we see him brutally kill Zeneman Sengoku. This is one of the samurai that assaulted his wife. And it's a pretty shocking kill, actually. It's almost like something out of a horror movie. So it's definitely a different type of killing that we're used to seeing in samurai movies. It's also real effective, just having the camera just zoom in and just showing the dead samurai's eyes. And right after the scene, Masa is arrested, and he's taken to Shibata to be executed. And Shibata is a very crucial town in this story. And since they're sitting on the fence with this issue, the Shibata are asked to either fight with the Alliance or with the Imperial Army. And since the Alliance won't relent, Yamagata targets Niigata Port. And this is a key weapon supply route for the Alliance army. Also a real key location in this story. And the Lord of Shibata wants to join the Imperial Army. However, Mitaguchi thinks otherwise. And since both the Alliance and the Imperial Army are set to arrive at Shibata on the same day, Mitaguchi decides to send Hishiro with his clan to Niigata Port, and this is to delay the Imperial Army's arrival in Shibata. And as Hishiro and Irie need men at Niigata Port, they ask the 10 rebels, including the woman who committed arson, to be the 11 rebels who will fight alongside Shibata. And the Shibata clan baits these criminals by saying once the battle's over, they will be pardoned for their crimes. But because Shibata's men sexually assaulted Masa's wife, he's unwilling to fight with them, obviously. So Hishiro gives them two options, or really one. The first is to fight with Shibata, and the second is to be put in a cell with cholera patients and die. Obviously, Masa agrees to fight with Shibata. And I'll just say, a way in which this movie immediately hooked me when I was watching it was just with this introduction of its group leader, Masa. I think he's a great character. Not only does he offer us a sympathetic look on the character himself, but it opens our minds to liking the other characters who want to join him as part of this rebel group. And I'll just say one way in which this movie did a really good job of just immediately hooking me was with its introduction of the main character and leader of the group, Masa. And he's really in this bad situation because he chose to avenge his wife. So you definitely can't help but have sympathy for him. And I did also enjoy some of the other rebels in the group as well. I like the guy who's just pretty much made fun of for just being a pretty boy, Mimaime. But he really proved to be more than that once the action kicked off. And he really was a key player, which makes it even more tragic what happens to him. And there's also Noro, who you really can't help but also like. You know, he's pretty innocent. And his real brotherly attachment to Masa really adds another layer to these characters. And of course it makes the ending all the more tragic. So I like how they put some personality in some of the characters. It's sort of like a callback to Seven Samurai. And I really just love that. On the first day that they're protecting the fort, the rebels are seen building and strengthening the defenses. And a while later, Masa actually tries to escape. And as he gets on the bridge, he notices that the Imperial Army is heading their way. So the whole clan hides in the bushes as the army gets closer to the gates. Eventually they're discovered and a fight breaks out. But it does seem like the rebels attacked first. It didn't really seem like the army was gonna attack them. And then we see the Imperial Army's Lord Sarah. He dies by falling off of the bridge. And this is what forces them to retreat. And later on we get a discussion with Heishiro and Masa. Masa tells him that even if he goes back to his wife, what has happened cannot be changed. So basically Masa doesn't have anything to lose and he doesn't mind dying. However, Heishiro gives Masa one last warning. Meanwhile, in Shibata, Mitsuguchi and his daughter Kana are arguing. She thinks that Mitsuguchi does not approve of Irie as his son-in-law. Once Mitsuguchi leaves, Kana's mother realizes that Kana is pregnant with Irie's child. So this also we'll see leading to something tragic. Honestly, there's a lot of tragedy in this story. So it's now the second day of defending the fort. The arsonist woman convinces Masa to play along with Shibata's orders so that he can go home to his wife. Meanwhile in the forest, Irie is seen telling Are that once the mission is over, he can kill the rebels the way he wants. And the arsonist woman overhears them saying this. Suddenly Oroshia sees an Imperial Army troop coming towards the fort, so he alerts everyone. But what the rebels did not anticipate was the Imperial Army's usage of a cannon. The rebels also realize that they're outnumbered, so Heishiro has a plan on how to fight back. And that's by creating a smokescreen to block their vision. Using this as an opportunity, the rebels begin fighting the Imperial Army within the smoke. Soon the commander realizes where the smoke is coming from and fires at Noro and the woman. The situation is now getting bad for the rebels. During the fight, Irie is badly injured, while Masa struggles to fend off the soldiers. And Noro comes to the rescue with his trusty firebomb. And we'll see a lot of these firebombs in this film, and, you know, obviously they're kind of unrealistic because they act more like grenades, and they definitely didn't have that back then. But I do admit that it adds definitely a level of fun to the action. So Heishiro captures one of the leaders of the group, and he ties him up to the watchtower for the Imperial Army to see. Meanwhile, Mimaime's handsome face now gets burns. And like I said, this is tragic because, you know, his good looks is really all that he had. So we're starting to see the rebels just take some serious damage. And later that night, Masa confronts Irie. The arsonist woman informs him that his plan was to get rid of the rebels once the job was done. And it seemed that only Irie and Arai knew of that plan. So we see that Heishiro was surprised as well, which means he wasn't involved. So more troops are starting to come out, and they start to realize that they're just a decoy, or more like a suicide squad. And it's funny because the English dub of the film actually calls them a suicide squad. So that's one good thing to the English dub, though I don't recommend it. And Shibata will be welcoming the Imperial Army once they get a signal from Mitsuguchi. On the third day of protecting the fort, the Imperial Army now promises to forego any criminal charges if the rebels agree to join them and release their hostage. Hearing this, the rebels find hope and they decide to fight with the Imperial Army, which Irie also approves of. However, Heishiro shoots the hostage, making the rebels have to stay and battle with the Imperial Army. Heishiro says that he did it to protect all of their hometowns. If the rebels don't stop the Imperial Army, then Shibata will get into a war. And so the rebels come together and they fight. While the rest of them are making firebombs, Masa once again tries to escape. Masa informs Yamagata that he possesses the head of Shibata's troops commander. And as this is going on, the rebels, or more like Suicide Squad, set the firebombs on a bridge. And unfortunately for Masa, Yamagata wants to kill him, but Noro comes to Masa's rescue by throwing one of his trusty firebombs. And as they can't wait any longer, Nimeme lights the firebomb and it explodes. Along with the Imperial Army, even Masa and Noro drop into the water. Meanwhile, inside the fort, Irie dies, and the next day Masa drags himself and Noro to the fort. The rebels see the oil well right above the enemies. Noro sniffs the oil like a dog and they start digging, and oil comes gushing out. And it flows conveniently right next to the Imperial Army, so you know where that's going. So they throw one of their firebombs, and they destroy their enemies once and for all. And then a really badass battle takes place there in front of all the flames. Masa ends up killing Sugiyama, which angers Yamagata. The remaining rebels cross over the bridge rope, and they cut it so no one else could cross over. So I just want to say that this oil subplot is a bit much, sort of like the firebombs. Even more so when you realize that Japan doesn't really have that much oil like that. And there's just no way this was in the original script for the film from the 60s. So this is definitely more of a modern action movie concept. Though I will say the explosion was pretty awesome. But realistically again, you probably wouldn't find oil like that in Japan. But I'm guessing it's sort of like a nod to westerns. Anyway, on the fourth and final day, but at this point there's hardly any members of the rebels left. So now Masa leaves early, but he notices Shibata members coming towards the fort. And this is the grand finale. So the rebels are excited at first, but then Mitsuguchi kills everyone except Heishiro. Seeing this, Heishiro is infuriated, and he decides to fight to the death with the Shibata, and he announces himself as the 11th rebel. And I just gotta say I love that line. It's definitely the most iconic moment in this entire film. And easily the best fight in the entire movie. And I actually think it's worthy of being put on a top list of best fight scenes in samurai movies. But as this is going on, Masa and Noro try to gather firebombs to help Heishiro. Although Heishiro takes down many of the soldiers, he's badly injured. In the end, Mitsuguchi shoots Heishiro. Masa ends up having Noro run away so that he can survive. Unfortunately, Masa sacrifices himself, and he lights a bunch of firebombs and takes out as many soldiers as he can. So in the end, we see Masa die, and same with Heishiro. And now the new government army, with the help of Shibata, conquers Niigata Port. Mitsuguchi in the end is spared, and he's loved by all the people, of course not knowing of all of his crimes. When Mitsuguchi gets home though, he sees that his daughter, Kana, has killed herself. And this is because he did not keep his promise. The arsonist woman and Noro visit Masa's wife, They give her money, also Masa's scarf, and this is as a remembrance. In the end, the only surviving members of the rebels are the arsonist woman and Nora. And even though it seemed like Mitsuguchi got away with it, he paid the ultimate price by losing his daughter. Masa's wife receives closure, even though it's pretty sad. But the real reason that Hishiro sacrificed himself by fighting with Mitsuguchi was that he had grown fond of the rebels. Maybe as they were fighting alongside each other. Till the end, it seemed like the rebels were doing a better job, but the Imperial Army and Shibata joined hands and destroyed everyone. The film depicts the effects of Civil War, but also the political games that go behind it. So, like I said in my review, just a really bittersweet ending. Kinda just leaves you feeling similar to the end of Samurai Rebellion. I remember after I watched that, I just didn't really know what to say or think. It's sort of like this film. It's like no matter what, the system can't be stopped. And they just cause misery to everyone. And after watching it, I was trying to decide if it would have been better if it was a happy ending instead. And for some people, maybe. But I believe that it would have made the film seem cheaper and forgettable. And I did love the bloody last stand fight with Hishiro. Again, just a really great fight. Also, Mitsuguchi killing him with the pistol sort of depicts the samurai being phased out. And just the pain of seeing Hishiro almost kill Mitsuguchi. He ends up only cutting the crest on his clothes. It really makes you wish that he actually killed him. That would have been pretty awesome. But at least Mitsuguchi suffered fate in losing his daughter, so he lost in a different way. And would probably most likely commit seppuku. So in the end, even if this movie was missing 35 minutes, I'll say it's still a great film. Highly entertaining, greatly paced, great action, and just a great tragic ending. Sometimes I like tragic endings, it's like Shakespeare. But I believe what would make this movie perfect is if it had more character development, maybe more development with the story, and just give us more information on some of the lesser characters. Hopefully we get the full cut someday. I'm sure someone will sell it. So if you end up seeing it, let me know, because I definitely want to see that version and see how it holds up to this. Anyway, if you like what I do, please subscribe. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon. I also have a free Discord where we just discuss everything. And like always, thanks for watching.